Our MC gets a letter addressed to Derek from a soldier who says it's been 10 whole years since they last met, and now he's being told to head straight to the capital. He folded the letter, looked away, and grinned as all those old memories hit him at once. Rewind to a few days ago in the city of Richest, where things were popping off at the Blacksmith's Guild and someone was asking what they'd told him before. This is our main guy, and he's totally stunned, asking if he's really getting fired for no reason. You can tell he's completely crushed as some dude stands in. The guy starts screaming that Derek's work for the guild is totally worthless, and Derek just stands there in total shock without even trying to defend himself. Our guy apologized and asked for the real reason, but the guild leader just told him he was way too weak for how much he cost. Turns out it was the guildmaster Sinan, and after explaining this was why he got fired, he told Derek to beat it because he was busy. So Derek just said he was all ready. Sinan was hyped that everything went perfectly, sticking his tongue out and joking that he was just glad they finally trashed it. Our hero decides it's time to head straight for the capital. He hops into the carriage and hits the road. Before he knows it, the driver tells him they've already arrived. The kid was super hyped about his toy horse, showing off exactly how it moves while the woman next to him watched with a big smile. As Derek hopped off the cart, the kid thanked him and called him Grandpa, making him realize just how many years he'd actually spent grinding away at the forge. He'd been doing this for 30 years and was a total old-timer now, reaching his hand up to the sky to give it a real close look. Derek just landed right in the capital of the Kingdom of Gloss. This tiny town is totally boxed in by huge mountains and deep woods. Our main guy walked through the city and realized the place was way more crowded than the last time he visited. He didn't even leave a note. And honestly, leaving was the perfect move because he felt so relieved he actually started humming to himself. Suddenly, a food stall catches his eye, so he walks over and asks the lady, "What's good?" And when she says the wild boar kebab is fire, he decides to give it a shot. Dura pays up, grabs a meat skewer, and starts devouring it even though it's steaming hot, saying it tastes absolutely amazing. She told him she'd never seen his face before and asked where he was from. So he just said he was from Richest. He mentioned he used to be in the Blacksmith Guild before getting kicked out. But right then, some guy starts shouting, asking if they even realize how much that falchion is worth. She was totally fuming, clutching the broken pieces of her blade and yelling that this piece of junk couldn't even slice through a tiny twig. The guy snapped back that she just didn't know how to use it, and you could tell he was getting super annoyed. Our guy immediately asks if a fight is going down, and the woman explains that all that noise is actually coming from the gun shop. The lady tells him nobody actually wants this weapon, but our guy just smirks, knowing there are always haters who don't get it. Dura thanked her for the awesome food and said he was going to scout the area while she told him to stay safe out there. The client starts losing it, yelling that the guy promised her the sword was real steel and could take down that plant monster, and now she's freaking out, wondering if she actually got scammed with a fake. The arms dealer told her she had zero proof, but he had this creepy smile on his face and looked like he was getting seriously annoyed. She was super annoyed because he was actually right. But then the kid looked at her, called her mum, and told her they should just stop the drama and get out of there. Right then, our guy shows up and looks at the broken blade, wondering if that dude was actually serious about it being made of steel. Derek called out the arms dealer for lying, and suddenly the guys arguing and everyone nearby stopped dead in their tracks to stare. He reveals he's a blacksmith and that the sword is a total fake, made of cheap tin instead of real steel. The arms dealer pointed right at him and screamed that it was all a total lie. Our guy walks up to the woman and asks to borrow the item, and once she hands it over, he confirms it's the evidence they've been looking for. Durette points out that you can see everything right on the edge, especially those ripples on the surface. If there was actually steel inside, that mark would have stayed totally smooth. People in the crowd started whispering that a local blacksmith said the same thing, proving our hero wasn't lying, and someone even shouted to go get the guards. The hand thief got so heated he actually fainted, and Durette called him out for being a total scammer who was just tricking people. Our guy was totally fuming and looked dead serious as he turned to the dude, calling him out for being the blacksmith behind this whole mess. The arms dealer is shaking with rage, yelling at the guy to shut up, since this is all his fault. And then he grabs a sword and warns him not to take another step. This dude lunges right at our hero, screaming for him to stop the lecture, so the MC tells everyone to clear out while he mumbles a curse under his breath. Just as the arms dealer tried to make a run for it, a girl suddenly blocked his path and told him to freeze. Then she suddenly knocks the sword right out of his hand, leaving the hero and the angry crowd totally stunned. The arms dealer was out cold on the ground, so the girl told the guards to drag him away, and they were totally down to help. Right then, the whole crowd just exploded with joy. Everyone was grinning ear to ear, and people were even throwing their hands up in the air. Word got out that she was the one bossing the soldiers around, and as everyone started cheering for her, our MC was left totally speechless. He looked her right in the eyes and thanked her for saving his life. But she just played it cool and said it was her job, until she suddenly spotted something. She gave him a long look and started getting super nervous, tripping over her words as she tried to ask a question, while Durette just stood there feeling totally awkward. He was stressing that he looked like a total bum or some sketchy old dude, but then he heard someone asking if he was actually a teacher. The girl flashed a massive grin, her face turning bright red as she said her name was Militar and asked if he still remembered her. The commander thought back 10 years to when the hero made her a toy sword, and she instantly remembered that little girl with the ponytail. Durette took a closer look and grinned, saying she'd grown up so much he barely recognized her, and she happily shouted back that it really was him. She asked if he got her letter, and right then her crew started asking who this guy even was. Militar says she'll give him a chance because he actually looked after her back when she was super tiny. Once she sent her squad on ahead, a shocked Durette asked if she really became the big boss, and she told him it was all thanks to him. Our MC starts hyping her up for the big win, but she just brushes it off and says it was all thanks to her sword. Durette asked her what she was even talking about. Militar just told him to look her right in the eyes. That's when she finally started to understand him. You could tell he was super zay. He grabs the pitch-black blade and realizes it's the S-rank light sword, Shinma. And while he's freaking out over this legendary treasure, the soldier casually drops the bomb that he's the one who actually built it. Dirk was stunned. He didn't recognize such a cool sword and figured he was just getting old. But the girl told him she had a totally different way of putting it. The soldier got totally serious and told her that the toy sword he made for her had become way more epic. Our hero is totally stunned and asks her about it again because he's never heard of anything like this, and she admits she's seeing it for the first time too. Militar says this weapon actually evolves right along with her, starting as a tiny dagger when she was a kid and transforming into its current form as she grew up and figured out who she was. Then she tells him his sword can actually level up, and he just stares at the blade in total shock. Durette stared hard at the sword, wondering if this was actually the same toy from back then as he tried to match it with his old memories. He asked one more time if it was actually just a toy because he seriously couldn't believe it. Militar calls this the maturation of feelings, and while Dure looks at her with total curiosity, she admits it's really just her own theory. She looked him right in the face and asked if anyone else had seen those same weird symbols while he was crafting his tools. Our hero tells them there aren't any adventurers left, explaining that people always fake those letters, and he can't show his face there since he's just a blacksmith. He ranted about how people just trash his work immediately, but she cut him off, agreed with him, and said she actually called him there for a very specific reason. The soldier looked him right in the eye, with sparkling eyes and a massive blush, telling him she had a big favor to ask. She tells her she already wrote all about it in a letter and asks what she's looking for. But the girl just grabs his hand and says it's actually super simple. She asked him if he'd join them as the official blacksmith for her elite army. He instantly backed away and turned her down, saying it was just too much for him. So the girl bowed low and admitted she definitely asked for way too much. The army was crawling back to him for help, and she told him they were totally out of options, which completely shocked Doretta as he asked why they were even picking him. She said she had her reasons, and just as he asked what they were, the woman he helped earlier totally cut them off. She flashed him a huge smile and said she had no clue how to repay him. Then the girl next to her called Militar Commander, which Militar was totally not into. The girl walks over and says she remembers her from the opening ceremony, super glad that everyone made it out okay. The soldier suddenly grabs our hero's arm and tells him they gotta move fast, leaving him totally speechless until he finally snaps out of it and asks where they're even going. The woman and the girl kept shouting their thanks and told him he should definitely check out a hotel over in the Eastern District. Our hero thought he was making some solid allies, so he waved and promised to visit again. But Melita shut him down and told him he should have just kept his mouth shut before he said something he'd regret. Meanwhile, Sinan was back at the forge, fixing himself up and checking his reflection to make sure he looked perfect. He shut his eyes, hit a pose, and pictured himself looking totally smooth while flashing a big smile and a wink. He walked right up to the workers, asked if they were ready to make some bank, and the whole crew shouted back to show they were locked in. The guy flashed a smirk and kicked off the meeting, starting with what their guild actually stands for. Suddenly, a random guy cuts him off with an apology, and when Senon asks who he is, he sees a dark-haired dude backed up by a whole squad of guards. The kid walks right up to the guildmaster and asks if the MC is around, looking dead serious the whole time. When nobody answered, he asked for Doretta again and told them he was Senji, a messenger from the royal palace. The last guy said he was looking for a famous blacksmith for Doretta's request, but Sinon totally lost it and asked if anyone actually needed that dude's help. This dude claims he's the guildmaster and asks if there are any jobs for Sinon, but when he hears there aren't any, he gets even more ticked off. Sinon announced that the main character was history, and he'd finally cut that dead weight loose, leaving Senji totally stunned as he asked if he was really getting the boot. The guy snaps back that Tourette is just wasting the guild's gear, and he has zero respect for him. Sinon just smirked and said the guy totally had it coming, while Senji started getting nervous and asked if Mr. Derrett was really gone. He was losing it more and more, and he couldn't stop thinking about how the Queen's favorite blacksmith got fired. Senji said things were a total disaster, so the soldiers asked for a plan, and while Sinon suggested just giving it to him, the boy reminded them it had to go straight to the main character. The guy was totally fuming, so he marched up to the soldier, snatched the box away, and demanded to know what was inside. And when the soldier tried to stop him, Sinon, the dude screamed that he was way more of a pro, but the second he opened that box, he was completely stunned. This glowing S-rank holy blade actually belonged to the angel Amatsurudzu, and it's seriously powerful. Sinan was actually shaking, saying the blade was so beautiful it looked like a weapon straight from a real angel. Sengi told him to give the item to Mr. Derrett for repairs, But the guy asked why he'd ever hand over something so valuable. The kid just sighed and admitted he forged the blade himself. But then he quickly doubled down that Mr. Dieu was the one who actually made it. Sinan remembered that our guy was the one who actually forged this sword, and he looked totally shocked and furious at the same time. He snatched Senji by the collar and started screaming in his face that this definitely wasn't a joke. People were convinced no human could ever make something this insane. Right then, the guard shouted to let Mr. Senji go. But he just told them the sword was never actually supposed to look like that. Senji revealed that Amatsurugi is a sword that can actually evolve, and the whole room went dead silent. Sinon was totally shocked and asked if the sword really got stronger, then admitted that everyone probably thinks he's a total idiot. Senji confirmed it was the real deal, so the queen immediately ordered a search while he stayed dead serious. Sinon screamed that he couldn't take it anymore, stepped up to the sword, and vowed to fix everything right then and there. Sengi put his hand up to stop the guy, since he wasn't the one he was looking for, but the man shot back that he was actually the guildmaster and the best blacksmith in the place. He gave everyone a cocky smirk, announced he was the star of the show, and told them to stay put, which Senji thought actually made a lot of sense. He kicked everyone out of the room, took a good look at the sword to make sure it was still solid, and figured he could just sharpen it up himself. He's never actually sharpened a sword himself, but after watching his workers do it, he's pretty sure he can handle it since he picks up new skills instantly like a total natural. He wasted no time making his move, but something went totally wrong when a huge scream erupted from the house, sending birds flying everywhere in a panic. Senji immediately shouted to Senon to see if he was okay after hearing that noise, but Senon just told him to shut up and stop bothering him while he worked. But things went totally wrong, and the second he tried to make his move, his sword just snapped right in half. Sinan realized he was totally cooked. He just smashed the kingdom's most precious treasure. Breaking that thing is a massive deal. He could literally be executed, hanged, drowned, or even be... This guy was totally panicking about his next move, and honestly, he had zero ideas. He knew he had to chill out and clear his head to find an escape, so he fired up his breathing technique. And suddenly, the perfect plan just clicked in his mind. Sinon figured if something was busted, he could just fix it, so he started digging through the boxes for anything that could help. He dug through a bunch of random junk until he finally found it. Some temporary glue. Sinon finally came out and thanked them for sticking around, while Shinji bragged about finishing fast, making it totally obvious he was the big boss of the guild. The kid reaches out to try the sword, but the guy shuts him down instantly, calling him a total noob and saying the blade is off limits for now. Sengi tries to argue, but Senna hits him with the "don't you trust me" line, and before Sengi can even make an excuse, Senna shuts him down again. Senji eyed the sword from a distance and claimed the blade was still uneven, but Sinan fired back that he was wrong and just needed to finish reassembling it. The guy walks up to the box and decides to just leave it right there. He figures if anyone finds it, he can just blame them for the whole thing. But the pressure was way too much, and the broken blade went flying across the floor, leaving Sinan, Senzi, and the guards totally speechless. The guy knew he was in major trouble now because the guards were fuming, his crew was shaking with fear, and Senzi was just standing there, totally clueless about what just happened. Shaking with fear, the kid looks the guildmaster in the eye and calls him out, reminding him he was supposed to handle everything. But the guy just starts mumbling total nonsense. He was shaking with fear, and when he looked back, his crew was clearly fed up with his weak behavior. He scratched his chin and stared at the ceiling, saying it was super weird because he was positive he'd already fixed it, so maybe he just got his jobs mixed up. Senji flew right at him, snatched him by the collar, and started screaming about what a total idiot he was. The boy sat down and said this guy had totally broken him and couldn't be trusted, so Seaton immediately started screaming about how rude he was being. Senji actually started crying, but those final words from the guildmaster changed everything as he pointed his finger and told him he was under arrest. So our MC is just chilling and having tea with Militar when he drops the bomb that he got kicked out of the guild. She's totally losing it because she can't believe anyone would fire. Military was clearly fuming, so she grabbed a fork and aggressively stabbed her cake while yelling that they were being totally unprofessional. Right now, Sinan is trapped in a carriage between two guards with his hands in chains, wondering how his life even got to this point. He knew the main character was behind everything, and he was totally going to make him pay for it. Back at the Gross Militer base, he walks right up to Doretta and claims she begged for his forgiveness just so he'd become their personal blacksmith. He said it was no big deal, but he needed a plan, so she told him everything was cool and to just look straight ahead. The military used this spot as their forge, but Dorat pointed out that its massive size already made it obvious who it belonged to. They headed inside together, and the girl immediately apologized to the whole room, making everyone look up and salute their commander. The guys instantly jumped up and saluted her, telling her that this is just how they always greet her. The soldiers told them to chill out, so they listened and started asking her about the guys standing right next to her. Blushing with a huge smile, she tells them that this guy named Mr. Derrett is the one who forged her sword. The guys were totally stunned and didn't believe her for a second, since the fencer looked like a completely different person to them. Our MC scratched his head and nervously stuttered that his name was Derrett, and he was stoked to meet them. The guys started gossiping about meeting the legendary Blacksmith, saying he looked like a total old geezer instead of a master, and they were convinced the commander was just lying to everyone. He listens in, totally stunned that he actually forged such a beast of a sword, while also realizing they're still calling him an old man. Militar asks where Nana Hikari is, and after a weird silence, the guys tell him he finished the job and already bailed. She let out a massive sigh and asked if he seriously did it again, but the guys just said they warned him and he totally ignored them. He asked the commander if she's talking about the local blacksmith, but she cuts him off and says he's exactly right. She says their blacksmith is Nana Hikari, a guy whose family sacrificed everything, and he's actually the only son of Duke Felgrande. He was such a jerk that he was a total fail as a blacksmith, and since they just had to put up with his non-stop complaining, it was super obvious that she and her crew were totally over it. Our guy figured people like this were everywhere and just let out a sigh. But right as the girl was about to say he's on a whole other level, the door suddenly burst open. It was Nana Hikari, and he was literally glowing as he flashed a smile and joked about how the place was still a total mess. Militara calls him out by name right away, and when our hero spins around, he's shocked to see a guy who looks exactly like his old boss. The girl asks where he's been, and he just casually says he was on a date. Then she asks about the long sword, so Nana Hikari grabs it and asks if that. The kid tosses the sword right at the brunette guy and orders him to catch it, making him totally flinch. Check. 1 line in equals 1 line out. Preserve the sequence exactly. If the input is 4 sentences, should I provide 4 sentences? Nana Hikari flashed a grin and asked if they liked the sword, making the brunette stutter out a quick thanks before letting out a massive sigh. He looks at the sword and realizes it's built totally wrong, like no human hands ever touched it. So he turns to Melara to ask what's up, but right then, the boy spots him and starts to stand. Nana Hikari claims he's already fixed the whole mess. Then he rushes the brunette guy, grabs him by the collar, and asks if he's got a problem with that. Right then, our MC rushes in and blocks the dude's punch just as he's about to hit the brunette, leaving Koval totally caught off guard. Durant looked him dead in the eye and said a real blacksmith would fix their mistakes. But Nana Hikari just called him an old man and asked what he was supposed to do. The soldiers rushed over and told the boy to chill, but she explained he's actually a legendary blacksmith from Vritan who made her sword. Nana Hikari's jaw dropped as she stared at him, asking if he was actually for real. She started telling him he was finally a real blacksmith and that they'd have a new master, but she didn't even get to finish her sentence. Nana Hikari yanked his hand back and told Dorette to show his true power, but Dorette was totally confused and asked if he was really the one being challenged. The kid stood right in front of them with his arms crossed and a confident grin, suggesting they settle things with a massive blacksmithing battle. He says they're gonna duel with swords they built themselves, and the first one whose blade snaps is the loser, which our MC is totally ready for. The guy just smirks and says there are 2 conditions, gesturing with his hand to show he means business. Nani Hikari pointed at the materials and dropped the first rule. They can only be used to make weapons. The second rule is that one of the workers from this forge has to use his sword, and he pointed his finger right at the crowd. He pointed right at the newcomer, Convi, and the girl was so shocked her jaw literally hit the floor. Our hero was totally caught off guard, asking if he really had to stay and how long she'd been there. Since she was so tiny, he didn't even notice her at first. Dirk was totally caught off guard, but he played it cool and said he was down, which left Milita completely stunned and ready to speak up. Everyone just ignored her. Nana Hikari smirked and said the choice was already made. Our hero didn't even flinch, just locking eyes with his opponent. That's when the kid sets the duel for 5 days from now, saying if the man loses, he has to go back home. But our hero fires back that if he wins, he'll finally start taking his work seriously. Nana Hikari just sighed when they asked what he thought of himself, since he literally owns the forge. Then he stormed out and slammed the door shut. Milita dropped into a bow and apologized to Dure for making things worse, but he told her it wasn't her fault at all. And right then, Confi came sprinting over to them. Tears started streaming down her face as she asked what she was supposed to do, since the only thing she's ever learned is how to take care of a sword. He just grinned and told her not to worry, promising to craft a blade so powerful she'd never lose a fight, which totally blew the soldiers' minds. He promised to turn random scrap into top-tier weapons that most blacksmiths couldn't even dream of making, so he just gave a wink and told them to trust his skills. Eventually, he starts crafting weapons, but after firing up the forge and looking around, he realizes he's stuck with nothing but trashy D-rank materials. He pulled on his gloves and said it was showtime. But right then, the military burst in and started screaming at him. She told him it's been forever since she saw him work and asked to watch, so he said sure, as long as she stayed back. And she was totally hyped to agree. The soldier carefully sat down at the table without making a single sound, while our MC was busy melting metal in the furnace. He already had the whole plan locked in, so he started working the burning hot material and shut his eyes to picture the final masterpiece. His eyes snapped open as his tools started glowing like crazy, lighting up the entire room. The soldier realized he actually loved that sound. And even though he'd just been holding a hammer a few weeks ago, it felt like a total lifetime had passed since then. He's got blacksmithing in his DNA, and because he's so obsessed with his work, he can't help but break into a massive, happy grin. Our hero was brainstorming how to forge an even better sword for Confi, wondering if he could use a magic thunderstone to make the blade insanely sharp. He sat down cross-legged, folded his hands on his lap, and knew for a fact he could pull this off. Right then, The soldier jumps up and calls out to him. So Deret asks what she wants, and she just asks if he's finished yet. He tells them that after 30 years at the forge, he's gotten lightning fast. But things are starting to get a little bit weird. Just a few minutes later, the sword was finished, and it was a total S-rank beast that Dure knew was a legendary treasure, maybe even stronger than it looked. Militara looked down and told him he definitely went overboard, so the guy just gave a nervous smile and scratched the back of his head. The sun is finally up, and with a massive crowd gathered by the pantry, the girl steps forward to give everyone the lowdown. Melita grins and says the sword is totally ready, then waves Konfi over to join them. The crowd started whispering, saying he's clearly a pro since he moved so fast. And now everyone's dying to know what kind of sword he's actually using. The athlete marched right up to Doretta Militai, stood tall with a salute, and told her the sword was 100% ready for action. He told her she was totally right and didn't waste a single second handing her the sword. He gripped the sword and realized it was actually his, but he looked like he couldn't even believe it himself. He calls the sword Kamina, a legendary S-rank light blade from the Thunder Emperor, and as Duret hands it to the girl with a warning about how sharp it is, Natop is left totally stunned. Kanofi grabbed the blade, and her hands literally started to glow, making her blush with a huge smile as she gushed about how beautiful the sword looked. The soldier tells her the MC really meant what he did, so she shouldn't let those feelings go to waste, and Confite salutes right away, promising she's got it covered. She announced she'd train the girl herself before the big fight, and the crowd went wild, shouting that she'd definitely get way stronger under the commander's guidance. The soldier headed back to Confi with a huge grin, telling her she better be at the training grounds tomorrow, sharp as a knife. Confi was totally spooked by how intense she was. Back at the Nanhikari estate, the Lord was totally losing it, screaming about how the MC actually had the nerve to pull a stunt like that. This guy was absolutely losing his mind. He shoved his hand right in the servant's face and forced him to look. His hand had turned bright red. There was no way he was ever going. He calls her name, but gets zero reaction. And while her skills are insane, it's totally creeping him out. So he shouts that he's recording the fight to sue him later. The girl insisted he'd never act like that, so Nana Hikari asked her what made her so sure. The maid patched up his arm, told him he was going to be okay, and even tied a cute little bow on the bandage. Nankekar was clearly losing his cool, baring his teeth in a total rage, but the girl just ignored him and asked if these were really the materials for the sword. The guy flexed his S-rank loot and pulled out the craziest items from his stash, like solid metal, earth dragon scales, thunder god stones, platinum alloy, and eternal fire stones. He bragged that this would let him forge the most insane sword the blacksmith had ever seen. And as the girl nodded along, Nana Hikari squeezed his fist and swore that Jure better be ready because he was definitely getting his revenge. Training day is finally here, and even though Militar warns that fixing the Bowlmaster in just 5 days is a total long shot, and they still have no clue who she's fighting, the girl hangs on every word. The commander says the #1 rule is to keep that sword from snapping, and she knows exactly how to do it. Confi confidently said she got the plan, just block the enemy's hits, and Militaria gave her props before telling her to get ready. She says her body remembers everything and suddenly lunges forward, making it super clear she's totally done playing around. Conf was totally caught off guard when they skipped the rules and jumped right into practice, and our hero was just as shocked by what was going down. Out of nowhere, the soldiers lunged at her, but she stayed totally chill and blocked the strike with her sword like it was nothing. The girl explains that you shouldn't just dodge, you have to block with your blade, and she says she totally gets it now. The soldiers were totally down for another round, so she agreed and started thinking about the best way to block their blades. When the commander finally lunged at her, Confi actually held her own. She was so out of it that she didn't even notice the commander had vanished until she started frantically calling out for her. Suddenly, a girl sneaks up behind her, taps her shoulder, and tells her she lost because you can never let your guard down. But then she apologizes and offers a rematch. Watching the action, our hero realized she'd been going way too hard on her student since the very first day. Once night fell, a bruised and muddy Confit just flopped onto her back and gave the commander a huge, heartfelt thank you. The soldier looks her in the eye and tells her they're training with Kamina tomorrow, and she just gives him a quick nod. Then the girl with the sweet smile looked at him and told him to get his sword ready, and even though he was totally caught off guard, he still agreed to do it. Night had already fallen, with a massive moon glowing in the sky while the whole blacksmith crew gathered in the dining room to grab some dinner. This brunette was going totally beast mode on her food. The guy next to her was literally shoveling it down straight from the bowl, and someone else was just vibing and chatting with their... The brunette started venting about how the commander's training is still absolute torture, and when a super embarrassed Confit asked if they caught the whole scene, the other girl just confirmed it before they both slipped away into the shadows. They told him the fight was absolutely wild. She was kicking butt for someone her age and size. All that praise made her feel pretty awkward, though. She asked them if they were actually serious. Confi was super salty that they even mentioned the size, so she blurted out something she shouldn't have, which made one of the brunette girls burst out laughing, and then Confi grabbed the tray of dishes to head out, and once the guys said goodbye, the blonde girl handed a towel over to the brunette. Her friends call out to Confit, and the second she turns around, a towel smacks her right in the forehead, leaving her totally shocked and blushing like crazy. The boy realized their smiles were basically telling her to stay healthy, and as they cheered her on with friendly gestures, she gave them a quick bow back. It was pitch black outside, and our guy just stood by a pillar watching Confi go hard with her sword training. You could tell she'd been leveling up like crazy, landing hit after hit with zero signs of slowing down, and the guy was seriously impressed by how far she'd come. Confit finally stopped to catch her breath and wipe her face, and right then, the MC looked over and told her she did an awesome job. She whipped around the second she heard him, awkwardly asking if it was really Mr. Derrett, while he just flashed a smile and asked if she always trains this late. Confi just smiles and says she does this every single day, all because she's trying her best to finally catch up to the commander. She gave a huge grin, picturing Militaria right in front of her, and said her dream was to grow up and be exactly like her. He finally realized she was being bullied and rushed to her side because he was super worried about her. Grinning wide, the girl tells him he's a good guy, so he scratches his head and says he just cares, then asks if she's actually against the plan. But she, Confi, says the saber he made her is way too beautiful to let it break now. She stared at the masterpiece and called it the most beautiful sword she'd ever seen. When it hummed like a low roll of thunder, she felt a strange new spark wake up inside her. He stops for a second when she calls his name, but he just says he doesn't want to get in her way and starts to leave, giving her a smile and a wave while she wishes him. Seeing how hyped Confe was, Dorette couldn't believe she loved the sword that much, and he realized it had been forever since his work made someone this happy. It was obvious he was loving it, so he just smirked, turned around, and told them the choice was already made. He was just strolling down the street, humming a happy tune while thinking about how he'd have to work with Kamina. 4 days after the big rivalry announcement, Nanakari is totally fuming and decides to give Gilmus a call. The kid asked why his rank A sword had no elements even though it was super solid, and the servant was totally shaking because the pressure was just way too much. Gilmus was clearly a nervous wreck, tripping over his words while explaining that working with S-class materials is seriously tough. Nana Hikari totally snapped and yelled that he didn't want to hear it, waving the kid off while the boy grumbled about getting paid. The heir pulled out his sword and asked the kid if he was seriously ready to die right then and there. Gil was so scared he had to ditch his home and run, while Nana Hikari told his maid Aegon to bring a specific person to him, and she promised she was on it. Eventually, a mercenary from Detroit walks up to Hikari, calls him Lord, and asks what his real name actually is. While sipping coffee, the kid spilled everything about the situation to the man and admitted he couldn't forge an S-class sword. But Dorrit just told him the rank didn't even. This guy bragged he could beat anyone with any sword. Then he literally snapped a huge chunk of metal with his bare hands right in front of everyone. Nana Haka took a real close look at the twisted metal. Detro just stood there looking chill, totally hyped that his plan was working perfectly. At this point, the kid was won. The whole house felt like it was smirking because everything was going way too easy for her. But honestly, that just made it even better. Nana Hikari called the maid by name and begged her to keep this a secret from her parents, and even though the girl said okay, she looked super uncomfortable with the whole thing. It's finally time for the big match. Nana Hikari tracks down our hero to say what's up. He mentions it's been 5 whole days since they last crossed paths. Right then, the shop workers, the soldiers, and even the Dread were all staring ahead in total shock. Nana Hikari actually matched Detroit against Confi, making it official that this was going to be a total Blacksmith showdown. The crowd instantly recognized the guy helping the kid, and everyone started freaking out, asking if that was really the Detroit destroyer stepping onto the field. Everyone started yelling for people to watch the showdown, while the girl stood her ground, holding a weapon that was literally exploding with real lightning. Militaria was absolutely fuming, screaming that the whole fight was rigged as she squeezed her fists in rage, and honestly, our MC was thinking the exact same thing. Right then, Nana Hikari took one look at the sword the main character made and immediately called it out for being a total fake. The guys started laying out the rules, saying you lose if your sword breaks or you step out of the ring. But the girl immediately started shouting that it was totally rigged. Detroit looked at Confite and asked if this little girl was seriously his opponent, but she didn't say a word or show any fear until the judge suddenly grabbed their attention. He raised his hand and gave the signal for the battle to start. The guy immediately lifted his sword and lunged straight for Confi. Since he was a mercenary, he was a total pro who knew. He slammed into the ground so hard that dirt exploded everywhere, and Confitu actually had to back up because it was getting way too intense. The crowd was freaking out too, screaming that the pressure was so insane it almost sent them flying. Detroit didn't even wait for things to cool down before he lunged straight at the girl, yelling that she was finally getting what she deserved and couldn't run away forever. He smashes her back with another hit, and she instantly leaps high into the air to land way far away from him. She fell right into a trap, and as they hit the corner, Detroit started laughing because there was nowhere left to run from this fight. The crowd and the blacksmith's crew were staring in total shock, and it got so crazy that some people actually had to cover their eyes. He tried to get Confi to just surrender, but she totally shut him down. So he told her he'd warned her. The destroyer told her she'd definitely regret that choice, flexing his massive arms to show off his insane strength. Confi felt the pressure because the enemy looked dead serious. But then she remembered her commander's training and that Mr. Dure built Kamina just for her. Detroit swung his massive sword and told Confi to stay in the fight, and she shouted back that there was no way she was losing. Right after saying that, she finally lets her sword's true power go wild, and suddenly lightning is striking everywhere, while Militar and Nana Hikari just stand there completely shocked by what they're. Kofi used his insane power to snap Detroit's sword right in half. The broken blade went flying off to the side. His friends just stood there with their jaws on the floor. Our guy scanned the area with a worried look, wondering if he'd gone a bit too far with his sword. The judge caught on instantly and declared the argument the winner, leaving the entire crowd absolutely speechless. Militara ran back to him with a huge grin, calling him her teacher and saying they actually pulled it off. And he totally agreed. Confi ran up super hyped and called the girl her commander, who told her she did an awesome job, while a totally stunned Detroit struggled to his feet and headed straight for Nana Hik. Durette walks up with a smile and reminds him to finally get serious like he promised, but the guy just snaps at him to shut up and never talk to him again. Nana Hikari pointed right at him and screamed that he was quitting this trash army, telling them all to rot while he sued them, but his servant just gave him a massive death stare. She gave him a quick smack on the back to shut him up, and man, he definitely didn't see that coming. Deret, Confit, and Militar were totally blown away, so the maid apologized for her master and promised she'd set him straight and knock some sense into him. The MC, the commander, and Confi just stood there watching as the maid took Nana Hikari and Detrius and left the battlefield. After hanging out at the house for a bit, the guy suddenly snaps, screaming that Deret is a total villain he'll never forgive. Then he turns to the destroyer and demands to know what. Detroit just straight up quit right then and there, leaving the guy totally shocked as he admitted that losing to a little girl made him feel way too weak to keep going. She just headed out into the hallway and left, telling him he'd finally have a quiet life while he said his goodbyes to the group. The vibe in the house was totally evil as he shouted that the destroyer was a useless villain. Then he looked right at the maid and told her she was next, calling her a cursed traitor. Nani Hikari screamed that the girl had some nerve hitting her mistress and demanded an apology right now. She acted like it was no big deal and admitted she hit him, but the guy didn't even look her way as he told her to just own up to it. The maid quickly stepped back as she dropped the bombshell that he uses S-rank materials and a literal destroyer lives in that house. She told him she already snitched to his parents before walking out, leaving Nana Hikari totally floored by her final words. He bolts into the hallway after her, shouting her name and reminding her she promised to keep quiet, even yelling that he'll set her free. But right then, someone calls out to him. Those were his parents, and they were totally fuming with rage, so he gripped the paper tight but didn't call them right away. His dad demanded to know if he was using their export goods without permission, while his mum freaked out that he was trying to ruin the family name. They started screaming at him, asking if he even knew what he was doing, and while Non-Hikar tried to explain, they just ignored him until his dad finally snapped and said he was totally done with him. The dad straight up told his son he was kicked out of the family, and the kid was left standing there in total shock. The family head ordered the servants to drag him off to Tamana Forest. Nana Hikari begged them to wait and stop what they were doing, but the parents just ignored him, turned their backs. Nana Hikari desperately reached out to stop his parents from leaving, but no matter how much he screamed for them, they didn't even look back. After hanging out in the Taman Forest for a while, the kid was pushing his way through the thick bushes when creepy noises started coming from every direction, totally freaking him out until he was shaking with pure. Nana Hikari yelled into the darkness, asking what everyone actually wanted from him. He ranted about how everyone was just ditching him when he needed them most. Scratches were already starting to. Everything that happened was the main character's fault, and he was so jealous that he finally challenged him to a duel. Nathakiri stopped in his tracks, hanging his head and wondering why he didn't just tell the truth when he had the chance. Back at the army forge, Militar tells Konfi that this fight is the real deal and she's handling it like a total pro soldier. The girl saluted and thanked the commander, saying she only won because of her help, but the commander just grinned and said she was just the one who forged the sword. Our MC tells everyone she was the real MVP. She gives him the sweetest smile after hearing that. But right then, someone suddenly calls out her name. Confit bolted back to her friends, thanking Dorette and Militar again for the backup. And the guys started cheering like crazy, telling her she absolutely crushed it. Militar looked her in the eye and said her legendary career starts right now, and she totally agreed. She announced to the whole squad that Dorette was officially their new Blacksmith, and while everyone cheered and started calling him Grandpa, he was just praying that nickname wouldn't stick. Over in the kingdom of Grosser, there's this massive palace with a bunch of huge towers. Senji was creeping through a dark hallway when he suddenly heard someone screaming to be let out, and he spotted a group of people standing right in front of the cell. It was actually Sinan, and he was totally fuming, screaming that he wasn't some caged monkey and that they were definitely going to pay for this. The guy totally snapped because they were ignoring him, calling them all jerks, but one guard just acted clueless, while the other barked at him to shut up and sit down. Senji stopped for a second because the noise was giving him a massive headache, but then he walked over to thank the guards and they immediately snapped into a salute. The kid swings the cell door open and tells Sinan to get out, leaving Sinan totally shocked, while Senji looks super annoyed that he's even doing this. The next morning, a massive crowd is already packed outside the military forge, leaving the newcomers totally shocked and starting drama because they can't believe the line is this long again. Inside the forge, the guys were hyped that the Juro was fixed, since it made their swords way easier to swing, and they immediately started asking for blade repairs and armor adjustments. Our hero grips his hammer, turns to the crowd, and tells them to hold up because everyone's getting their turn. A bunch of people crowded into the forge, watching closely as Dorette started messing with the weapon. Suddenly, they spotted a sword inside a box, and since the doors were glass, everyone started buzzing about how awesome it looked. One guy starts bragging that he's about to own Kamina, but another dude jumps in to say no way because he's going to outplay him, right as a third guy shows up and swears he's the one who's actually going to win. It was Konfi, and she put her hand over her heart, declaring that she was going to be the true mistress of Kamina. The brunette asked if they really had to finish an S-rank mission, and she confirmed it, saying it's just like the commander having to take down one of the 4 demon kings. Right then, he heard the news and was totally shocked to realize Astif Militar actually took down the demon king. Konfi agreed the commander was a total beast and said she needed to level up too, while Derek chimed in that Military was a legit hero. Our hero flashed a grin, loving how his sword was racking up wins, and looking at that hammer made him feel like everything was finally perfect. Right then, everyone at the forge was hyped up and talking about what Doretti did with Kamina. He totally caught them all off guard. Now every guy there wanted to be a... Then he suddenly jumps up and calls it a day, leaving the other guy totally stunned as he heads outside and tells them to just come back tomorrow. Right then, a soldier walked up with a grin and told him he did an amazing job after such a super intense day. He totally agreed and said there was way more work than the list showed. And since he was finally happy, she just laughed and said she was stoked to hear it. The army says Doretta completely changed the soldiers, and now everyone is actually training hard because they're all dying to use Kamina. He just grinned and told her that was the best compliment a blacksmith could ever get, then thanked her for saying. Right then, the girl bowed her head and apologized for the queen holding him back, and when they asked if she really wanted to go cheap on his gear and repairs, she totally confirmed it. Then our guy says it's all good, because he totally gets that a weapon as insane as Kamina can't be everywhere at the same time. The soldier girl gave him a warm smile, her face turning bright red as she told him she had something big to talk about. And he immediately asked what was going on. She tells him the queen wants to see him, so he's got to head straight to the palace. Our guy was totally shook and asked if they really had to do this right now, but she was super confident when she said yes, leaving him a nervous wreck as he asked why they even had to do it at all. The soldier told him that because he stepped up, the whole army is finally fired up, and it's a massive win for them. Our MC was totally tripping, wondering why a literal queen would even want to see a regular guy like him. But right as he was stressing over what to do, the girl suddenly called out. The guy stumbles up to the soldier and nervously asks who the queen is. And after thinking for a second, she tells him she'll explain everything right now. The commander thought back to all their meetings and remembered how strict she was, while over at the castle, Queen Renade of Glossus sat on her throne and announced that Amatsurugi was officially broken. Senji dropped to his knees, swearing Sinon tricked him, but he just couldn't finish the job and was ready to take the blame, while the other guy was totally distracted by how stunning the queen was. The girl stood up from her throne, walked right over to them, and told Senji he was totally wrong. He bowed his head, shut his eyes, and admitted it was all true, telling her he was ready to take his punishment. The queen whipped out her lash and snapped that she has zero patience for failures. Then she struck him right across the body, and the boy's face turned bright red as he let out a painful. The girl threatened to hit him even harder, but he sounded way too happy about it, leaving Sinon totally stunned and asking what the heck was going on. Once the queen finally finished wrecking Senji, he was just lying there on the floor, looking totally satisfied, and then she walked right up to Senyon and told him he was up next. She lashes her whip and calls him a total villain, screaming that he's a guildmaster who destroyed their country's legendary treasure. The queen told him he needed to think about how much he failed, and as he started screaming in pain and reaching for her, she just got even angrier and declared he wasn't. Our hero finally hits the queen's castle in his military gear, and when the girl calls out to him, he's totally down to answer her. They walked right up to those massive painted doors, and even though Militar asked if he was ready, the guy didn't say a single word. Our MC says he needs a whole year to get ready while his heart is basically ripping apart, but she just laughs and thinks he's kidding. The guards start swinging the doors open for them. The soldiers tell the guy to relax and that everything is going to be fine. Apparently, the queen is actually pretty chill with anyone who knows their stuff. They walked right in and knelt before the queen, who told them she was super happy they finally made it. So Militura thanked her and introduced Darren. He steps up and admits it's him, so the queen gives him a huge smile and calls him the legendary blacksmith who forged Kamina and Shinmu. She pointed her finger right at him and shouted that he's the #1 blacksmith in the whole country. He puts his hand over his heart, shuts his eyes, and gives her a deep bow, telling her it's a massive honor while his face turns bright red. The queen told him he's got to handle Nana Hikari all by himself since she's too busy to help, and she even said sorry for leaving him hanging. She says her vision is getting blurry, but he snaps his head up and shuts that down, telling her she's wrong because her eyes are actually stunning and shine like jewels. The queen laughed and teased him, saying he's not just a pro blacksmith, but a total ladies' man, which made Derek blush like crazy. The princess called our guy in for some major news dropping the bombshell that Amatsuroji has totally fallen apart. He immediately asked about the sword again, and the queen asked if he'd seriously forgotten already. A clear glass stand is set right in front of him, and when the princess reveals this is the legendary Amatsurugi, our guy immediately apologizes to her. He'd never seen a blade this stunning in his whole life. The queen said a noble obsessed over it every day until the sword actually started to change. Eventually, that noble just gave it away to our guy was already planning his next jump to S rank, but he also had to figure out how to fix a sword he couldn't remember a single thing about. His eyes pop as he remembers his student warning him that the queen is super strict. Deret apologized and claimed he didn't remember a single thing, leaving the queen totally shocked that he could just forget the stuff he did with his own 2 hands. She grins and tells him he's a super interesting guy, and even though he's a bit quiet, she's totally hooked on watching what he does next. Dura was totally shocked that a fancy noble was so obsessed with a sword, since he never thought rich people cared about weapons at all. The queen explained that her Matsurigi sword just snapped, and since it's super special to her, getting it fixed is now her top priority. The guy was totally caught off guard because he never expected a request like that, especially one to fix a sword. He took a closer look at the sword and realized something was super sketchy. Just like the girl warned him, there was more to the story. Suddenly, another older guy stumbles into the room and faceplants on the floor after being shoved in like he's in massive trouble. The couple was totally caught off guard seeing him there, especially since he looked like a complete mess. The guy was stuck on the ground and couldn't even move, looking like he'd been slammed down hard just to knock him out cold. The queen called him out as the same idiot who broke the sword, and it was obvious she had a massive favor to ask Derek. She asked the blacksmith to train her as his apprentice, and even though nobody knew her real plan, she sounded 100% serious. The guy on the ground scowled as he caught his second wind, totally hating every word the queen said because she was just making him more and more ticked off. He tried to make excuses, calling the stuff trash, but the queen shut him down and told him he's the only piece of junk there and everything is totally his fault. They were so busy screaming at each other that they completely tuned out the rest of the world. Dura realized everything was a total mess, and he knew it was finally time to step in and handle it. She said one of her subordinates would look after them, a guy named Senji, who's apparently super nice and a total hottie. This kid walks in with a huge smile and swears he won't let Sinon cause any trouble, sounding 10 times stronger than he actually looks. Dorette crossed his arms and realized he was totally stuck because saying no to the queen meant losing his head or something way worse. He flashed a quick grin and promised to do whatever the queen wanted. It's not like he could say no anyway. He was totally stuck and had to go along with it. Right now, she told him she couldn't wait to see him win and walked him right to the throne room exit. Everyone cleared out of the royal hall, and those massive doors slammed shut, showing the queen was totally done with them. Duretti let out a huge sigh and stretched his back, realizing he'd been stressing over nothing and could finally just chill. He cracked his neck and told them it was time to head back to the hotel, because honestly, a long nap was the only thing on his mind after that wild adventure. She asked where he was crashing, so he told her he was staying at a hotel in the Eastern District because it's a great spot to chill out. Senji offers her a spot at the National Guard dorms, but Doretta blushes hard and turns him down, saying it's already super awkward just being there by herself. He says he's crashing at a super nice hotel, so there's seriously no reason to worry about him. The boy offered to walk them back home, because there was no way he was leaving his guests hanging like that. The director pointed right at where they stopped, a super cozy 2-story house that was actually packed with tons of rooms. He walked inside and told Dell he was finally back, feeling super relieved to finally get some rest. She flashed a big smile and told him she was starting to freak out because he'd been gone for so long, and she just couldn't get her heart to calm down. Melitaria was super annoyed and yelled that she was moving in too, which totally caught the couple off guard since they never expected her to react like that. With a sneaky smirk, the girl announces she's moving in today, and her confident vibe makes it clear she's not letting Derek get away that easily. Dell gave a nervous nod and hurried to get the room ready, honestly pretty freaked out because she'd never seen someone look like they wanted to set her on fire right then and there. She whipped around and stared straight ahead, desperate to find the answers she needed right now. She asks if he wants a bath or dinner first, and he says if military were there, they'd definitely eat first, since he treats her just like his own daughter. Sinan's girl was totally fed up, and everyone was losing their cool, but they all had their own reasons for being so mad. The guy snapped, asking why she only spoiled Derek when he lived there too, and honestly, he was getting super jealous because he wanted the pretty girl to notice him for once. Sanji shoves him away and tells him he's not welcome here, getting totally fired up and refusing to let him take another step. Dell drops the bad news that the inn is totally full except for the stables, so even though Seinon wants to stay, he's got no choice but to leave. Sonona was shocked they had the nerve to offer him a stable, and an angry Senji grabbed him by the ear to pull him away. The guy was totally ticked off and tried to flex his guildmaster title, but he's actually retired now, so that status doesn't mean a thing anymore. Dell told the couple to hang tight for a second, and Militaire suddenly turned to her teacher, looking like she was dying to find something out. The guy was totally caught off guard and stared her down, wondering what she actually wanted from him. She asks what the plan is for tomorrow, but he tells her he hasn't even thought about it yet. She got super hyped and said they could finally spend the whole evening together. Derek shook hands with the guy, who was super hyped to finally meet the blacksmith he'd heard so much about. Scratching his neck, the guy explained that Nana Hikari set everyone free, so they had no choice but to head out into the streets. They were all just hyped to see their commander again after being apart for so long. But then his voice totally changed, like he was about to drop a massive secret. He says there are probably tons of people like Nani Ikari who could break this big national rule, so shouldn't they be punished? Honestly, he's just lucky the queen decided. Senji suddenly pops up and reminds him it's time to fix the sword, and Jure is just relieved because he totally forgot about it. They walked up to a bag that was clearly bulging with something huge and heavy. Senji suggests tossing it into the bag that's already packed with steel, lava stones, aqua stones, magic rocks, and a bunch of other small stones. The kid hid everything from Nana Hikari because he wanted Jure to use them, since he's a legit blacksmith who actually loves his work. He said it'd be a massive honor if this guy could actually fix them up using Matsurugi. Derek took a close look at the stones and knew he could definitely use them, feeling super hyped to get his hands on such rare loot. The company next door asked to see him in action, and he was totally down for it since he loves showing off his skills. He looked at the sword and realized it was actually beautiful, crafted so perfectly that it didn't have a single flaw. Looking back at how he forged this blade, he couldn't help but hype himself up because it turned out absolutely insane. But then he started to doubt himself, wondering if he could actually top his younger self or if he'd totally lost his touch at fixing swords. The whole squad crowded around to watch him get ready, and everyone was super hyped for him to finally kick things off. He pulled on his gloves and realized stressing out was a total waste of time, so he decided to focus on a real problem: how to fix his broken sword. He started grinding like a legit blacksmith, pushing through the struggle for so long that he couldn't turn back even if he wanted to. The sword was finished in a total flash, and everyone watching was shocked he got it done so fast, because his insane work speed always blew their minds. 3 rookie blacksmiths were dying to know his secret sword-fixing tricks and begged him to be their teacher. But even though they just wanted to be legends like Derek, all that attention, the military girl stood there with a huge grin, bragging about how her teacher is a total superstar and showing him off like he's her own dad. He felt super awkward and told them to stop hyping him up. But then he saw Sinon looking totally annoyed nearby, so he just gave a guilty little smile. Dorette says he's got to practice with his hammer first because his skills are still way too weak. The guy totally snapped and started yelling that he doesn't take orders from anyone because he's way too proud to let someone disrespect him like that. Sandy smacks him right on the head to shut down his ego, and even though it looks totally savage, nobody dares to say a word. Derad hands the guy a hammer and tells him to smash the metal, but warns him to watch his fingers or he's gonna get seriously hurt. He suddenly snatched up the hammer, but the crowd just stared because they didn't think he had what it takes to actually pull it off. Sinan lifts his hammer high, ready to slam it down on the metal. He's dead set on showing everyone who looked down on him that he's actually got some crazy talent. It was a total fail, and since it's him, he still managed to smash his own finger. The dude hit the floor and started rolling around, screaming his lungs out from the insane pain in his finger. Derek asked if that guy was okay, but Sinan warned him to stay away because the dude was super salty and jealous of all the attention Derek got for his blacksmithing. Senji smacks him again and tells him to stop swinging that hammer. The crowd starts whispering as they watch the drama unfold. Everyone is totally shocked by how Sinan is acting right now. The guy screamed that he wasn't a joke, and Jure realized he was in deep trouble because this bad student was actually on a whole different level. That night, everyone crowded into the bar to toast the new Mr. Dorette, and the whole place was just buzzing with pure hype and happiness. Everyone raised their glasses and cheered to drink every last drop, finally letting go of their stress to just enjoy the night. Military Hayes was finally locking in and ready to learn. But that night, you could tell just by looking at her face that she was totally fed up. She asked why Del and Comfy even showed up, since she totally thought they were going to spend the whole night alone together. Dirk tells her he invited a blacksmith and some soldiers, making the girl super mad because she wanted a romantic night alone, not a loud party with a bunch of dudes. She snatched the mug and started chugging it down. And even though Kunfit tried to jump in, it was way too late to stop her. She slammed her mug down and told him to quit bugging her. And even with beer splashing everywhere, this soldier wasn't stopping until she finished the whole thing. The second she brought up alcohol, her mind went straight to her Doretta dolls, models 25 and 40, those 2 little handmade figures she always keeps right on her belt. There was no stopping her now, and since she was totally wasted, she started playing with dolls, leaving the guy next to her completely stunned by her weird behavior. The nearby crew thought the girl with her new doll was super sweet, so instead of judging her for being so hyped, they did everything they could to support her and share in her happiness. Conf said she's going to keep playing like this until tonight, so you'd better stay away if you don't want to get wrecked. Suddenly, the image of the Militarum commander just vanished from Darrett's head, and he didn't see her as a scary boss lady who bossed everyone around anymore. Del confronted her husband about that blacksmith duel she heard he was in, and since she was totally stressed out, she just needed a moment to cool off. She thanked him for the insane weapons he forged for Confer, but Dara just shrugged it off like it was nothing, being way too humble about his master blacksmith skills. She told him to stop being so humble, since that epic sword is how she took down such a powerhouse, but he insisted it was actually all thanks to Confi's training. She stared at them with huge, wide eyes, looking just like a little kid staring up at their parents. She suddenly runs up and asks if he's making a weapon for himself totally hyped because seeing Mr. Dorrit gear up is super rare and exciting. Dure was totally confused and told them he didn't need a weapon because he was just a regular blacksmith with no plans to go out and fight like everyone else in town. Militara's like, why not? And now she's determined to prove to her husband that building their own weapons is actually a genius move. She says if he just uses his own gear, everyone will see how insane it is, and then they'll all be lining up to buy weapons from him. The guy stopped to think and realized it actually made a lot of sense. So even though he wasn't totally sold yet, he decided to give it some serious thought instead of just brushing it off. What she said really got him thinking about his favorite toy, that spoon he uses as a weapon, and it looked like he was finally down for this adventure. Militania stood right in front of the crowd and announced that Mr. Jarrett was finally making his own weapon. And honestly, everyone there was absolutely hyped to hear it. She told him it'd be great for self-defense, and he realized a weapon like that would totally level up his blacksmithing skills. Everyone was totally hyped for the plan, knowing that if this legendary blacksmith was finally making a weapon for himself, it was going to be absolutely insane. The guy flashed a friendly smile and thanked everyone for having his back, but then someone nearby suddenly yelled out in English, and the whole crowd went dead silent to hear what was going down. Sinan starts screaming that everyone totally forgot about him, and he's losing it because he wants all the hype and attention Direct is getting. He screamed that he needed a weapon too, asking why only she had one when he was definitely worthy of a blade made by a master blacksmith like Doretta. Suddenly, someone snatches his ear and yanks it again, forcing him to go dead silent. Sengi forced him right back to the hammer, because anything was better than listening to him yap. Nobody was even surprised, because they all knew this guy had to be stopped before it was too late. Derek just stood there with a super awkward smile, totally stuck between wanting to laugh his head off or just start crying. So where exactly is the Gloss army hiding their houses? Derek was digging through the box like crazy, desperate to find exactly what he needed. He grabbed 2 stones and realized they were perfect, knowing exactly what to keep and what to toss just by looking at them. He kept digging through the boxes and found even more awesome gear for his job, making him super hyped about every single thing hidden in this warehouse. Melita asked why he wasn't using the Class A materials, reminding him that they were totally up for grabs and nobody would even care. The guy turns them down and says a low rank is plenty, since he's not even looking for the high-tier loot. Dorette wanted to save the best gear for his soldiers, since he knew the guys fighting right next to him needed it way more than he did. Hearing those words, her eyes went wide as she finally realized that the guy standing right there was actually a super kind person with a heart of gold. Her face turns bright red and she starts shaking, making the guy spin around in total shock because he has no clue why she's acting so weird, and it's actually starting to freak him out a bit. She wiped her tears and called her teacher a total legend, saying she couldn't even wrap her head around how incredible the person standing right there actually was. He told her she was giving him way too much credit, but he'd already packed his bags and was ready to roll since he couldn't wait to start crafting his weapon. A crowd swarmed the guy to see what kind of weapon he'd build, and everyone was hyped to jump in and share their own ideas. He scratched his head, totally stuck with too many ideas, until a girl in the crowd suddenly yelled for him to make a sword. She proudly offered to help with sword training, wanting to finally pay her teacher back for everything he did for her. He let out a massive sigh thinking about that sword, totally convinced he wasn't strong enough to actually swing it. He was seriously doubting himself, already picturing how he'd totally mess up trying to swing that massive sword. Dorit pulls on a glove and says they should switch things up, leaving Militana totally confused until he suddenly grabs a hammer without saying a word. He told everyone he was picking a hammer as his weapon, grinning as he pictured himself building it and finally putting it to work. Everyone watching was totally caught off guard because they expected some epic weapon, but nobody ever imagined it would actually be a hammer. The guy says he's a blacksmith who uses this tool every day, so it's actually the most natural weapon for him to fight with. The third guy figured that since he's already used to swinging a hammer for work, it'll be way easier for him to master it as a weapon. The crowd totally got it, because they knew this blacksmith always delivered, and since they'd back him no matter what, they were hyped to see such a sick weapon idea. After grinding away for hours, he finally showed off a massive hammer that looked heavy as heck, but totally reliable. Everyone in the crowd was losing their minds over how huge and perfect his work looked, and even though they didn't see it coming, they were totally loving what they saw. He checked out his masterpiece and knew it looked awesome, so now he just needs a sick name before this weapon is officially ready for battle. Militana stepped up and told him she had an awesome name for his brand new weapon. The whole crowd was hyped because they knew she'd pick a sick name for the sword, since the commander is literally the best at naming weapons. She proudly dropped the name Doretti's Hammer, totally sure that everyone there was gonna love it. Suddenly, the whole room went dead silent, even Dorette, because hearing that name totally shocked everyone. The crowd started going wild because they loved the name, but the guy totally hated it and thought it was straight-up garbage. Everyone started losing it, shouting that the name was super cool and totally fit such a beastly weapon. He totally hated the name, but he couldn't say a word because everyone was staring at him, waiting to hear what he thought. After a long silence, he finally agreed, knowing he couldn't just crush everyone's dreams by giving up that title, no matter how scary it was. The entire crowd was losing their minds with joy, and Dorette was right there celebrating with them because seeing everyone this happy was literally the only thing he cared about. As a direct tamer, if you pump magic into your hammer, it'll hit with the insane power of a falling meteor. Fast forward a few weeks, and they're already heading to the second training zone. He stood in the middle of the field, swinging a hammer to build up his strength and master the weapon for his future battles. A guy standing right there was hyping him up, and after Dorette thanked him, he wiped the sweat off his face from that insane workout. The kid explains you have to let go of the sword at the perfect moment or you'll be wide open for an attack, and Dorette says he totally gets it. The guy explains that a hammer is basically a shield compared to a sword, and while he tells him to focus on defense, he dodges the question and just says he's putting all his This all goes down the second their training kicks off. The guy could barely move because his body just wouldn't listen, making his training sessions a total nightmare. He didn't even hesitate, swinging that hammer with total confidence, like he was smashing a real enemy standing right in front of him. Everything's finally clicking. His body is actually listening to him now, and those strikes feel way easier, making him so hyped that all that brutal training is finally paying off. The kid cheered at the top of his lungs, telling the guy he was doing an awesome job and that he was super hyped to see his new friend winning cause he knew he'd only get stronger. His blacksmith skills made swinging that hammer feel totally natural, and it was so easy to use that he knew he'd picked the perfect weapon. He pushed through a bit more training, but they finally took a breather since the guy had been grinding all day long. Dorette let out a huge sigh and crashed under a big tree to catch his breath after that brutal hammer training. Out of nowhere, a girl pops up and tells him he did an awesome job, strutting beside him like she'd been secretly watching his training for ages. Militar mentioned he's got zero free time because of his non-stop training, and Dorette was super hyped to see the girl since it's always awesome to run into someone you know. She said that because of him, the soldiers actually loved training and hanging out, since he was the ultimate leader they all looked up to. He looked around and saw everyone was busy grinding. Some were swinging swords, others were running, and a group was smashing out push-ups. He's just smiling at the crazy scene, but then his eyes lock onto the girl's waist because he spots something suspicious hidden under her cloak. He spotted two little man-shaped toys hanging there and was totally blown away that she still kept them, especially since one was 25 years old and the other was 40, which honestly, the soldier asked to sit down and he said yes right away, since he's way more comfortable with company and thinks talking is way better than being alone. Dorrit was seriously wondering if he'd even thought this through for a second. Even with all the crazy danger and wild missions, things were getting super intense for him. He knew that without her letter, his life would have been a total wreck after losing his job, and things could have ended up way worse. He just found a brand new world, and he was dying to check it out. He knew right then that if things kept going like this, everything was about to go south. Suddenly, a scream for help cut him off, and the couple whipped around to see who was making all that noise. This young soldier rushes to find his commander to report a total disaster, and looking at the pure terror on his face, it's clear only the captain can handle this mess. She bolted up and asked what went down, her voice getting super serious as she flipped the switch from chill to total action mode. Right in the middle of a forest where the trees were actually made of stone, the kid started telling his story. We spotted these insane steel bears, and since they're Class A monsters, the deadliest things in the entire forest, you know the situation just got way more dangerous. The couple was totally blown away by the news and knew they had to jump into action right now before everything spiraled out of control. The couple stepped into the city and saw pure madness, with everyone scrambling to grab their gear and get their families to safety. Dorrit asked what those monsters were, and Militar realized she'd totally forgotten to tell the blacksmith anything since he was completely out of the loop. Basically, these guys are way smarter and meaner than normal monsters, making them a total nightmare for travelers, so you definitely want to stay far away. The guy had never heard of monsters like these before, so the girl explained they're super rare and basically a total mystery. She also said these monsters basically hate humans and attack for no reason, instantly trying to kill anyone they see because they're driven by pure, brainless instinct, making them a total nightmare for everyone. Jared was totally shocked and asked if it was really that bad, but the girl just nodded, knowing these bears were straight-up killers that could end your life in a heartbeat. He grit his teeth in fear, finally realizing that things were way more serious than he first thought. Militanix stepped up, and even though she was totally embarrassed, she finally worked up the guts to ask if he'd come with her. The guy looked down and went quiet for a second, but then he snapped out of it and asked why they even picked him, since he's definitely not some pro fighter. The soldier stands right in front of the crowd and yells out the news that everyone already knew. Seeing steel bears pop up in the stone trees forest was a huge problem because those beasts could easily crush anyone nearby. She explained that these bears are decked out in steel armor, so she told everyone to aim for the gaps to take them down. She wrapped up her speech by saying they'd turn those bears into new weapons, and Militana announced that Dura was coming along for the ride. The soldiers were totally hyped when they heard the news. It felt like a massive weight was finally lifted off their shoulders. They knew this guy was their best bet when things got ugly, even if he just grinned and said this was the perfect chance to see if his training actually paid off, so he's totally down to team up. Militana screamed that these bears are total beasts and basic hits won't do a thing, so they need to use every trick they've got to take them down. She told everyone to never forget this, and the whole army let out a massive roar because they knew she was right and there was no room to argue. The whole squad piled into the transport and moved out, with a massive army of soldiers charging straight into the forest to wipe out those monsters. A few hours pass, and Rhett notices it's totally dark now, which is bad news since fighting at night is way harder than in the daylight. The squad hits the forest of stone trees and stops cold, knowing they need a real game plan to survive those bears, because winging it just isn't an option anymore. Melitana told everyone to fan out and find those bears, and the soldiers all shouted back in total agreement. Everyone split up and scrambled through the woods, frantically checking every single hiding spot they could find. She stepped forward and told everyone it was time to go, ready to lead her squad and put her life on the line to keep them safe. A small group was trekking through a creepy forest that definitely didn't want them there. The whole place felt super heavy and like something bad was about to happen. It was honestly terrifying. Kunfi was literally shaking, whispering that the real fight was way scarier than she thought, because training was nothing compared to hunting a massive bear. Dirk admitted he was actually pretty nervous, which totally shocked the girl, since she thought a grown man like him was fearless. But she couldn't have been more wrong. He told them to stop stressing because everything was totally fine for now, and there was zero reason to freak out yet. Milita was right there with them, and Kofi realized he was totally right. Sticking with this girl meant they were safe, since she was way stronger than both of them and could easily wreck those bears. The commander also mentions they've got 2 holy weapons, which are totally going to help them crush those bears. Check out Doretti's epic hammer and sword. Militara reveals she's totally immune to everything except holy attacks, and the only things that can actually scratch her are Doret's creations, the hammer and the girl's sword. She said the old blacksmith was made of the same stuff, but didn't know how to do anything, so it's no wonder he was totally useless. This was the mark of her teacher, and since the guy knew literally everything, every hard-working student was desperate to learn from him just to get some fame and respect. Doret scratched his chin as it finally clicked. He needed a weapon with holy power to crush these monsters, exactly like the girl said. Militana agreed and said having him on the team was a total game changer, because with 2 sacred weapons and a solid squad, their chances of winning just went through the roof. A weird howl suddenly ripped through the silence, and since the forest was so quiet, the 3 of them whipped around instantly to see what it was. A massive mob of goblins suddenly swarmed behind them, making the 3 of them freeze in total shock. They definitely weren't expecting to run into an entire army like this on their. Konfi starts freaking out and screaming that they're about to be lunch, while Doret's eyes go wide as he stares at their unexpected guests. He's completely caught off guard by these visitors in the forest, and as his body goes stiff, he realizes he has absolutely no clue what to do next. The fighter quickly counted them up and shouted that there were 5 goblins. She figured their secret hideout had to be right around the corner, but the goblins were already holding up their weapons. Doret asked if they were finally going to throw down, but the girl shut him down because she had a totally different plan in mind. Militana told them they'd just bolt if things got sketchy. Then she snatched up a rock and chucked it at the goblins to send them running. She smacked 3 goblins all at once, sending their little sticks flying and leaving them with huge knots on their foreheads. Most of them bolted, but 2 stayed behind, death staring the team to try and act tough. And it was super obvious they weren't going to back down without a fight. Dore realized fighting was totally pointless right now, so he forced himself to think about something else, just to stay out of the drama. The goblins hoisted their weapons and let out a massive roar, looking totally ready to crush these intruders and win the fight. Konfi completely lost it and started screaming her head off, because even a basic goblin was way too scary for someone as weak as her. Militana stepped up and told everyone to get behind her, but she was totally shocked when Dorrit stepped forward too, making her freeze up, since she swore she'd be the only one protecting the... He gripped his massive hammer and charged, sending those goblins flying back like he was just brushing dust off a table. The girls were totally caught off guard. They never expected this guy to pack such a massive punch. They just stood there, frozen, with their mouths wide open, watching the whole thing play out. The goblins hit the dirt, scrambled back up, and bolted away as fast as they could because they were totally terrified. He grinned with pride as he realized his training finally paid off, totally shocked by the insane power behind his own hit. The girls were all smiles, looking at the photo of the hero who saved them, totally hyped by the epic scene they just witnessed. Confess shouted that Mr. Derrit was a total legend, calling him her hero for saving her from those scary monsters that were ready to eat her alive. Militana says it's wild how they got this strong in just a few weeks, and you can already see the training is totally paying off. He gave a shy smile and thanked them, feeling totally embarrassed by all the hype, but even though he wasn't used to it, he was low-key loving the attention. He told them they couldn't stop now because they were so close to the end, so they had to move fast. Out of nowhere, a terrifying scream ripped through the deep woods, and it didn't sound human at all. It was probably the exact monster bear they were looking for. She's totally terrified, and Candy starts shouting to find out what's going on because that creepy scream really freaked her out. So she looks around for the source just to try and... Derrit locked in and got ready for battle, waiting for her to give the signal since he wasn't allowed to move an inch without his captain's direct order. She warns them not to let their guard down because they still have no clue what's going on, so they've got to stay sharp and stick together. The forest went totally still and everything just froze, making the silence feel heavy and way more terrifying after that massive scream. The squad scanned the woods, hunting for any sign of danger so they'd know exactly what they were up against. Militana spotted something and totally freaked out, screaming for everyone to hit the deck as fast as possible. A massive tree comes flying at them so fast it could kill them in one hit, and only someone with insane power could have thrown it. A massive trench was carved into the dirt like a riverbed, and it was super scary because that tree looked like it was about to crush someone. Everyone was freaking out, but Milithana stayed totally chill because as the leader, she had to keep her cool and guide the squad forward. She walks up to ask if they're okay, and Dorrit says he's fine, but he's clearly rattled by what he saw and is only just starting to snap out of it. Crying happy tears, the girl thanked the captain for saving her life. Then she turned around and her guard went way up. She could feel it in her gut. This wasn't over yet. Deep in the dark woods, something was creeping up on them, ready to pounce so fast and silent that they wouldn't even see it coming. A massive iron bear stepped out of the dark woods, standing on two legs in shiny armor like a total monster. Dirk was totally blown away by how massive the bear was, and it was terrifying because one single swipe of its paw was all it needed to end someone's life. Militana didn't waste a second and gave the order, so the nervous girl grabbed her whistle to call for the backup they desperately needed. Everyone in the forest heard that sound and knew someone was in big trouble, so they had to sprint over there before it was too late to save a life. Militana stepped up and told her team she was taking this fight solo because that bear was way too dangerous for anyone else to risk it. She reached for the sword on her leg and slowly pulled it out, making the whole dark forest light up with a mysterious glow. Her blade glowed with power, totally ready for the fight. She stood her ground, determined to shield everyone behind her. There was no way she'd let them get hurt. The girl's sword suddenly glowed with a crazy magical light, leaving Derrit totally shocked since he'd never seen a weapon this rare before. She stepped right up to that bear and pointed her sword straight at its face, refusing to back down because she was going to protect her friends no matter what. She vanished in a heartbeat, totally disappearing from sight and leaving the guy completely stunned like she'd just melted into thin air. The military unleashed her divine flash move, so she smacked a few guys to stun them and then flew high up into the air over the bear. She landed and checked out her attack, but it did absolutely nothing. That bear and its armor didn't have a single scratch on them, and she was seriously frustrated. She's totally losing it because her ultimate move did absolutely nothing. And even though that hit usually finishes anyone off, this guy doesn't even have a single scratch on him. The bear dodged and snatched the tree as the roots tore out of the dirt, leaving Militon totally stunned that this monster actually had some serious combat skills. The bear just grabs a massive tree and swings it right at the girl, sending huge rocks whistling past her head that could have totally wrecked her. She wasn't scared at all and kept a total poker face, since being the head of security meant she knew exactly how to handle an attack. She swatted away the monster's attack like it was absolutely nothing. With one quick swing of her blade, she sent those stones flying right back where they came from. She didn't even break. Doretta was actually shocked at how easily she tanked that huge hit, and the guy definitely didn't see it coming since she looks so sweet but packs a serious punch. Confit started hyping up her captain, totally sure she'd tank that hit because she never doubted her strength for a second. Militaru explains it's not that simple, because the higher a monster's rank, the smarter it gets, making it a massive headache to actually defeat. The bear stood up and lunged straight at the girl for a head-on hit. Militano was totally shocked that it switched up its plans so fast. She didn't realize the bear. She was totally sure she'd win because she trusted her skills. And as the leader, there was no way she was letting her squad down. She dropped into a fighting stance, looking totally ready for whatever was about to go down. Militana swings her sword, but the bear catches the blade right in its mouth and won't let go no matter how hard she pulls. Just as the girl reached for the sword, Confit screamed for her to watch out, totally freaking out because she was so scared for her commander. The bear raised its massive claws to strike, so Derek gripped his hammer tight, knowing the girl was toast if he didn't step in right now. He dashed forward to help out because there was no way he was letting the commander handle this all by himself. He smashed the bear back with one huge hammer swing, sending it flying and forcing it to drop the girl's sword. Millar thanks her for the save, but he tells her it's way too early to chill because he's still totally on edge and ready for whatever goes down next. Confess yelled that she was going to go find backup, even though she sounded pretty shaky. She just really wanted to do her part and finally feel useful for once. She told her not to move a muscle, while that massive bear behind them got ready to strike again. The monster lunges straight for the girl, targeting her first because it thinks she's the weakest and most vulnerable one there. Militana was way too fast, grabbing Kung Fu and leaping out of the way right as the bear attacked. She kept her eyes squeezed shut because she was terrified of what was out there, feeling like she'd literally die if she even dared to look. Direct looked around in total pain at the girls collapsed on the ground, while Confa opened her teary eyes, completely shocked that she was actually still alive. She started yelling apologies at the captain, but Militana just stood up and said she was actually just super relieved the girl was okay. Seeing Militana get slammed back, the guy knew he couldn't send her against that monster again, so he had to think of a new plan fast before it was game over. Nobody's coming to save him, so he decides to step up and handle it himself. Now, he had to protect the two people behind him, but he caught himself and said he just had to do it. He leaned in and gripped his hammer tight, knowing he had to move right now if he was going to save his friends in time. The bear stood tall on its back legs to face the guy, who was dying to win and already gearing up to strike. Suddenly, this creepy black energy starts swirling around the bear, and it's definitely bad news. Direct is totally stunned because he never expected a bear to have powers like that. He realized it was just like spotting cracks in metal. He could see every single weak point and tiny flaw perfectly. Derek was totally locked in, knowing he could fix the break with just basic materials since he saw exactly where it snapped. The bear lunges forward, but the guy holds up his massive hammer like a shield to block those giant, sharp claws. He saw exactly where to hit the guy, but he had to block an attack with his hammer, and that heavy weapon was totally getting in his way. The monster raises its sharp claws over the blacksmith, ready to rip him to shreds in one massive swipe. Militana started stressing over her teacher, but Rhett just gripped his hammer harder as it lit up with magic, getting ready to make his move. He dumped every bit of magic he had into the weapon, and the flash was so crazy bright it blinded him while lighting up everything in sight. The weapon smashed a massive hole right where the dead bear was lying, the same monster he just took down like it was nothing. Doretta was totally stunned and couldn't even process what just went down. He looked around, with his eyes wide in shock. He could barely believe that he was actually the one who... Militaris shouted down to check on her teacher, and even though he was totally shaken up, he told her he was doing just fine. The guy was totally clueless about what he'd just done, so when he dropped into the pit, the girl asked if he really didn't remember a thing. Since forgetting something that big, she said a blinding light flashed during the attack, and when Derek asked if a massive hole really opened up, she told him it was the truth. He was totally shocked he actually pulled it off. And man, he was feeling super hyped about how insane his own power had become. Confi suddenly tackled him with a massive hug and started sobbing because she was so relieved he was okay, while Doretta just gave a super awkward smile and said sorry for stressing him out. Militana was seriously hurt, but she tossed her cloak back and stood tall to show her team she wasn't backing down. She just smirked, told everyone she'd deal with the guards herself, and walked straight over to the group to talk things out. Everyone by the pit was losing their minds over how cool that hammer strike was, especially since the bear was totally gone, and it looked like a straight-up meteor hit the ground. Confi threw her arms around her husband, and Dorette gently stroked her hair to calm her down, letting her cry her heart out because he knew exactly how much she'd been freaking out over. The only thing that matters to him is that the girls are safe and sound, and knowing he actually protected them makes him feel so much better. A few days later, the soldier checks in on his mentor to see if he's doing okay, since he knows firsthand how tough things have been. Derui says his bones are still killing him, but he's gonna live, while the girl brags about being almost totally healed. This guy thinks being young is the best, and he honestly hates that he's still stuck dealing with this kind of mess at his age. He asked if the stone forest was being guarded, and the girl was totally shocked because it was such a weird thing to ask. Doretti was freaking out because he realized he was way too broke to pay for all the damage he just caused. Militana was caught off guard again, but she just laughed and told him to chill out since watching him lose like that was actually pretty hilarious. She explained that this would show everyone in the future just how strong the smith was, and Dar was totally blown away because he never expected to become such a legendary example. Militana says everyone's calling him Derek the Punisher now, and having a scary rep like that definitely has its perks. The whole room went dead silent because nobody even knew how to react to that. He switched the topic as things got loud outside, and seeing that everyone was ready for a brawl made him pretty hyped. Every soldier was grinding like crazy, all dreaming of finally reaching Derek's insane power level. Militana saw the young soldiers were totally blown away by him, and he was actually shocked that he'd become their new role model. Ran whips around and spots a couple nearby, and even though she's totally caught off guard, she's clearly stoked to run into them. She put her hand to her head, stood up tall, and thanked the captain for the work, telling him their goal was to run a massive 10,000 kilometers. Dure was totally freaked out because running 10,000 laps sounded like a straight-up impossible nightmare. Militana says this training is totally exhausting, but it's actually great for knights to sharpen their skills until they're completely wiped out. Out of nowhere, she walks right up to her commander because she's got something major to tell him. The couple was totally stunned and asked if she'd already finished her laps, but Confetti said that wasn't it right, as they heard some light footsteps nearby. The girl ran in to say that a guest from the Academy of Great Magic had just shown up. Militana was totally caught off guard when the guests showed up way earlier than she expected. Then, this gorgeous girl walks up with a huge smile and says she hasn't seen Deret in 15 whole years. The guy was totally shocked because he had no clue who was standing right in front of him. And no matter how hard he stared, that face was a complete mystery. Right after Nana Hikari got kicked out, two people met up in secret. But when one asked for an update, the agent had to admit their plan was a total failure. She said this pro-blacksmith named Dirith ended up being the only one left in the entire Storm army. The guy tells her that just banking on luck is a total mistake, so she bows down and apologizes, knowing that lying to him would hurt her way more than just telling the truth. The Lord knew she was way too important to lose, because losing her right now would totally wreck his plans. He gives his agent one final shot, which is crazy since he's almost never this nice. She closed her eyes and thanked the host for being so kind, feeling so relieved to be alive and safe, because now she finally had a second chance to fix all her mistakes. That rough voice told her not to blow this chance, and she didn't say a word. She just nodded along, because her life literally depended on it. Doretta asks who she is, and the girl gets totally mad that she was forgotten, but she keeps her cool since she's not a little kid anymore. She flashed a mean smile and said her name was Issa, acting like that was all anyone needed to know. Dorette felt a wave of dark energy, and suddenly it all clicked as his lost memories started rushing back to him. He remembered they used to play together way back when, and Issa was so hyped she grabbed his hands and told him how stoked she was to see him again. She stayed totally calm while admitting that she couldn't stop thinking about Mr. Dorrit for even a second. Milaru stepped right in the middle and told the girl to back off since the guy was totally exhausted, trying her best to drag the annoying girl away from her teacher. Issa spotted the toys on the girl's belt and joked that she was just playing a game, making her burst out laughing because she thought the whole idea was totally ridiculous. She giggled behind her hand because Milita was acting like a total baby, making the girl so mad she was ready to scrap with her rival right then and there without even caring who was watching. She got totally serious and said she'd been waiting to settle the score. And now that the moment was finally here, she balled up her fists and got ready to throw down. There was no way these two were ever going to be friends, and the second they met, you could tell they were already total enemies. Derek gave a nervous smile and told everyone to chill, then asked Issa what she was even doing there, since she just popped out of nowhere. She perked right up and ran over to ask for his advice, but a sudden shout totally cut her off. A guy rushes up to them, and Izu introduces him as his assistant. But even though the guy is being polite, the assistant straight up says he doesn't believe this old man is actually the best blacksmith around. He was totally annoyed and asked if she really had the guts to talk back, warning her that they'd be settling things in person once he returned. And just like that, he almost completely trashed his cool reputation with a single sentence. Militera was right there, and she immediately shut her deputy down, telling everyone that Dorette is a total pro and she won't let anyone trash-talk his insane blacksmithing skills. The guy's face totally flipped as he started acting super hyped to see the commander, telling her she looked as amazing as ever. But to her, his words just sounded straight up. Doretta realized this old guy was actually super scary and wondered if he even knew how creepy he looked, but then a massive scream totally cut her off. Sinon rushed over, yelling that he followed every instruction, but the tool still broke. And now he's so ticked off, he's ready to pick a fight with the whole world. Doretta spins around and realizes it's the same guy he just clocked in the face, totally shocked that he's already back and screaming accusations out of nowhere. Senji gave a quick bow and apologized for losing his cool and wrecking the tools, feeling super awkward since the guy specifically told them to keep them safe. And now he was just straight up ashamed. Out of nowhere, the deputy flashes a creepy smile, flips the sign, and rudely asks what they want, since he's clearly not in the mood to answer any questions. The guy threw his arms out for a hug and grinned, saying he never expected to find someone so amazing way out in the middle of nowhere. Everyone was totally shocked because they'd never heard this about Sinon, since they always saw him as a lazy, spoiled brat who just wanted everything handed to him. The deputy confidently offered the blonde guy a job as a special instructor, acting like he'd known him and his powers for a long time. Looking at himself, the kid knew this job was a perfect match, and he was totally gonna love it. He threw his hands up and shouted that he's a total genius, trying to convince everyone that he's always been one of the greatest. The guy acted all smug and said they had to head back to school for some paperwork, but ESA tried to shut him down since the whole mess was just a prank gone wrong. The deputy snapped that he'd wait for her in his room once he got back and was totally done talking to her. Sinon started flexing on Dieu, telling him their skills weren't even on the same level and he needed to stay humble, all while Sinon started feeling like he was a total one-of-a-kind prodigy. Both of them vanished in a flash, leaving the whole group standing there with their jaws on the floor. And since nobody had a clue what just happened, they all decided it was better to just never speak of it again. Check out the Gross Army's massive military base. Militara sets a cup of tea down on the table and offers it to her guest. Dorit forced an awkward smile and said, "It's a total nightmare, working with a deputy who has such trash manners." Issa sighed and admitted he was right, apologizing for the drama and feeling totally embarrassed by the deputy's actions. He remembered she was the new supreme mentor and told her she should be hyped, making her blush and look down. She said the only reason she pulled this off was because of the staff Dorette built himself. The guy was totally stunned and started wondering what kind of staff he'd actually built, since he had zero memory of ever making anything like it. ESA didn't even hesitate to show it off because she knew for a fact that Dorette was the one behind it. Suddenly, she's holding the Great Wizard Devondo's staff, a crazy powerful rank 5 weapon with light magic. He stared at the staff in his hands, but his mind was a total blank. He had absolutely no memory of ever using something like this. Isaac said the staff is super old and has been upgraded so many times that it's totally normal for it to look way different now. Doretta was totally stunned. How could he even call this his job after it changed so many times, and he was honestly too embarrassed to even claim that weapon as his own? The guy snapped out of it and asked what she wanted to talk about. So Issa told him the academy was finally teaching classes on the sacred attribute. She asked him to make some special holy staffs, and when he promised to get the job done, she was totally hyped and thanked him. The army says she's been totally obsessed with holy attributes for ages, and she's actually dying to team up with the other students to study them. She said she was totally free and wanted to check it out. So Issa agreed and suggested they head to the academy right this second. Dorette told them to hold up so he could grab his hammer, because he definitely wasn't leaving something that important behind. Isaac used her teleport powers to warp straight to the right spot in a total flash. They finally made it to Grossmech Academy, and a girl was right there waiting to welcome them. The two of them just stood there with their jaws on the floor as the whole place opened up in front of them. Everything from the magical gardens to that massive, fancy academy building looked absolutely incredible. I had to go see the director first, since he's the biggest deal at the academy, and I couldn't even think about meeting the students until I checked in with him. A friendly girl sitting at the table welcomed the squad, introducing herself as the school's director, Olena Hrosova, and saying she was hyped to finally meet them. Militar says it's been way too long, and Olena is just stoked to see her looking so healthy, making it super clear these two go way back. The guy introduces himself as Derek and says he's happy to meet them, but then he suddenly stops as a bunch of questions start popping into his head. The director heard the MC crafted a staff with sacred powers, and she's hoping her students can use it to finally master that rare magic. Issa drops the bomb that this girl is the queen's sister, and the guy is shocked because they look exactly alike. Tall, blonde, and so gorgeous that every man's head is turning. Olena flashed a smile, saying she's super chill with hard workers, but a total nightmare for lazy people, and she's hyped to see what Derek delivers. She was just about to introduce him to her students when a sudden, loud scream for Izu rang out, totally catching everyone by surprise. The deputy was standing right there, looking super annoyed that she didn't come to his room after she got back, and he demanded to know why she was still holding on to that misunderstanding. Sinan acted like a total brat, asking what that boring grey thing was even doing there, and since he was wearing a crown, he started trash-talking every single person he saw. Duret let out a massive sigh, because his head was absolutely killing him, and he really wasn't in the mood to babysit some useless person when he just wanted to crash. Out of nowhere, someone snatched Isa's hand and yanked her back, totally catching Duret and Militaru off guard. They weren't expecting things to get that intense so fast. The girl struggled to yank her arm back from the deputy's tight grip, screaming at the top of her lungs for him to let her go. But the deputy just gave her a nasty smirk and asked. The blacksmith shoves the guy's hand away and shouts that he won't take that kind of disrespect, and his massive frame makes it clear he could easily snap a bone if he wanted to. The deputy started losing his mind, shouting that he's one of the academy's oldest sages and asking how the guy wasn't ashamed to grab his hand like that. Dorette points out that the guy wouldn't dare mess with Izu, and that's when the deputy starts shaking, admitting he knows everyone there is way stronger than him. Sinon told the guy to run while he still could, but the deputy was already booking it to save his own skin. The boy took off, yelling for Dure to listen and not do anything stupid while he sprinted after the deputy. The three of them just stood there in total silence because things got way too intense. And even though nobody wanted to talk about the crazy stuff that just went down, they definitely couldn't act like it never happened. The army asked how the girl was doing, and the director said they had to tell her everything right now because she might be the only one who can figure out a way to help. The couple was ready to spill the whole story to the director to help Isa, but she thanked them and chose to handle it herself. She just flashed a smile and said she was doing totally fine. Her eyes went totally dark as she said she was used to it, and you could tell just by looking at her that she'd been dealing with this for a long time. The soldiers and everyone else just stared at Isa with total sadness, feeling seriously bad for her. She clapped her hands together, trying her best to switch the topic. She's dying to show this couple off to her students, knowing for a fact the whole class will absolutely love them. Essa pointed to the day and told the group they'd finally made it to the meeting, inviting everyone to head right in.